Basic psychology. Factors affecting eyewitness testimony. Post-event discussion. Sarah, did you know that the way we remember events can be altered by discussing them with others?
Really? How does that happen?
In a study by Loftus and Pickrell, participants were given 4 stories about their childhood, 3 of which were true, and 1 was false. The false story included being lost in a department store when aged 5 and an elderly lady rescuing them. Participants were then asked questions on whether they recalled these stories. Results found that 29% of the fake stories were recalled by participants, believing them to be true.
That's incredible. So, just discussing an event with others can create false memories?
Yes, that's right. Other research has found that a conformity effect occurs when co-witnesses reach a consensus view of what they think happened from discussing. Gabbard et al., 2003, conducted a study where participants were paired up and each partner watched a different video of the same event. Pairs in one condition were encouraged to discuss the event before each partner recalled the event they watched. The results found that 71% of witnesses who had discussed the event went on to mistakenly recall items acquired during their discussion.
Wow, I had no idea that discussing events with others could have such an impact on our memory.
Yes, it's important to be aware of this when discussing events with others or when being questioned repeatedly. It can help us be more mindful of the information we are receiving and how it can impact our memories. Post-event discussion evaluation. Did you know that research into misleading information and post-event discussion has some limitations?
No, I didn't. What kind of limitations?
Well, studies conducted in a laboratory setting may lack external validity and wider generalization, because they lack ecological validity and realism.
I see. What are the strengths of the study, then?
The laboratory setting allows researchers to control for extraneous confounding variables, and clearly see the link between leading questions and recall. It also makes it easier to verify results for reliability through replication, and establish cause and effect relationships between leading questions and memory recall, which would be difficult to do in real-world settings.
That's interesting. But what about the weaknesses?
The use of students as participants may have been a confounding variable in itself rather than leading questions, as they are not representative of the range of ages in the normal population, and therefore, the sample lacks population validity. Also, research suggests age may be a confounding variable in itself when it comes to leading questions, with younger children being more susceptible to influence to misleading information than older ones.
I see. Is there anything else we should know?
Real-life studies outside the laboratory setting have found that witnesses to real events tend to have accurate recall even many months after witnessing events, with misleading questions having little effect. This suggests that previous findings by Loftus into leading questions may possibly be limited to laboratory settings. How anxiety affects eyewitness testimony. Sarah, do you know how anxiety affects eyewitness testimony?
No, I don't. Can you explain it to me?
Sure. According to Deffenbacher's study, the efficiency of eyewitness testimony depended on the level of stress/anxiety. Low and high amounts of anxiety resulted in poorer recall, while moderate levels of anxiety yielded the best and most optimum level of recall and performance.
That's interesting. How can this be applied in court evidence?
Establishing eyewitnesses' level of arousal/anxiety may be key in court evidence to determine the validity of their account. However, this in itself is likely to be difficult and purely based on a subjective measure in itself.
What about the effect of violent situations on eyewitness testimony?
Loftus et al. Found that observing a violent situation may distract attention from everything else happening, leading to poorer recall. However, Christensen et al. Found that increased anxiety led to improvements in the accuracy of recall in real-life situations, like bank robberies.
That's fascinating. What are some other findings?
Clifford and Scott found that witnessing stressful situations in real life will be far more stressful than observing a film. And memory accuracy may well be more affected in real life with poorer recall. How anxiety affects eyewitness testimony evaluation. Eyewitness testimony can be crucial in solving crimes, but it's not always reliable. There are criticisms of research into how anxiety affects eyewitness testimony, as most studies have been conducted in laboratory settings and lack ecological validity.
What does that mean?
It means that the participants in these studies are usually motivated and eager to engage in the study, which may be unrealistic of real-life witnesses. The possibility of demand characteristics is very possible with such laboratory studies.
What are the benefits of conducting laboratory studies then?
The benefit is that such experiments can be easily replicated for validity and reliability checking, as well as limiting confounding and extraneous variables to establish cause and effect relationships between anxiety and eyewitness testimony.
What are the conflicting findings of how anxiety affects EWT?
Studies have found that stress/anxiety can aid recall, but it's likely to have experienced the first increasing levels of stress in the Yerkes-Dodson curve. While those suffering from poor recall may be due to them being within the second part with overarousal, resulting in poor recall performance. There is also research evidence to suggest the Yerkes-Dodson curve is far too simplified to explain how anxiety affects eyewitness accounts. Catastrophe theory may better explain the conflicting findings of how anxiety affects EWT on a three-dimensional scale. This includes performance, physiological arousal, and also cognitive anxiety too.